Hello, friends, and welcome to this special trade deadline live stream edition of Coming In for a Landing. I'm, of course, your host, Paul Hudrick, and I'm going to talk to you guys for a while. Got some great questions already online through Twitter, via Twitter, the Twitter machine, and then also hoping to get some of you guys that are watching right now. Please chime in on the live stream right now and hit me up with some questions. And yeah, we got already got some awesome people checking in. You got my good friend Tom Feiner checking in. Kelvin Nunez, I know you're a big follower as well, man. I appreciate you. Um, let's see. We have Jeffrey Stewart, my guy as well. I appreciate you, Jeff. Jeff, I know already submitted a question via Twitter, so I'm definitely going to get to that as well. JB, hello from the PNW. Hashtag Sixers. Thank you so much for checking in, JB, man. I appreciate it, brother. So yeah, let's kind of get into it. I guess we can kind of start with what's kind of been circulating out there, what we kind of already know and don't know. For those of you who don't know, last night, Adrian Wojnarowski kind of laid out what the Sixers are looking at. Obviously, Kyle Lowry, they are very much in on that. It appears to be them and the Heat. Woj also threw in there the wrinkle that, don't rule the Lakers out, the Clippers as well. I personally, it seems really difficult for either the Lakers or the Clippers to really make a competitive offer for Kyle Lowry and still maintain the basketball teams they have. So I don't really see a clear path for Kyle to go to LA. Miami though, that's going to be a big contender for him. He's good friends with Jimmy Butler. It's Miami, man. The weather's beautiful. I mean, there's all that too, the lifestyle. And they're going to have some money to spend. They're going to be, they would be able to re-sign him next year. I already saw that Tim Reynolds from the AP, who does break a ton of Heat news, he already said that he believes that Kyle Lowry will be on the Heat next year, whether they have him this season in a trade and then sign him or whatever, what have you. So the Sixers are gonna, they're gonna have to make a competitive offer. I personally, when you look at all the teams, I kind of feel like the Sixers do have the best package they can offer because they can give you a young player, a guy like Tyrese Maxey, who I am very high on, and I think the Toronto Raptors should be as well. And they also have, first round picks. They unlike the Heat, who can't trade any first round picks right now because of that Stepien rule, which precludes you from trading consecutive first round picks in consecutive seasons. So the Sixers aren't subject to that because the only kind of draft pick they have kind of tied up is the 2025 first rounder with Oklahoma City because of the Al Horford deal. So when you look at the package the Sixers can offer, man, I mean, it's the most competitive. Does that mean that that's where Kyle Lowry ends up? I don't know. I guess there's also still the possibility that Kyle Lowry is still a Toronto Raptor. That's not an impossible thing to have happen. But adding on to, Woj's report as well, he talked about, the four guys, one being Lowry. Lowry's teammate, Norman Powell, who's having a career year, will also be a free agent at season's end. Lonzo Ball, who I am very intrigued by. Some Sixers fans I know aren't necessarily intrigued by him, but I think you should be. And then the last one, it's certainly the least sexiest name, but it's still a name that can help them, and that's George Hill, who is currently hurt, but playing for Oklahoma City, kind of toiling away. He was part of the Drew Holiday deal, wound up in Oklahoma City. He was playing very well before he got hurt, and he ticks a lot of boxes for what the Sixers need. But I guess for me, I look at all four of these guys. All four of them can help the Sixers to varying degrees, certainly. Kyle Lowry is a difference maker. He could be the difference between getting, maybe being a second round out and potentially reaching the NBA Finals. He's that good. He can make that big of a difference, especially against teams like, the Milwaukee's or the Brooklyn Nets, those kind of teams. He could certainly make a difference. He's a difference maker. And then I would probably rank it like this. I would probably rank Lowry 1. I'd probably have Powell 2 because I love that Powell is a scorer, and I think they need that. I think they need a guy who, like Powell, not just like he doesn't have poor shot selection, but he's not afraid to shoot. And I think they need more guys like that. I think they need a player like that who's just going to come in, He's not going to be afraid of the big shots. He's going to take open looks. He's going to, get his own looks as well. So I would be very interested in Powell. I'm not sure what a package would look like there. Ball to me is the third guy on the list. I am really intrigued by the idea of Lonzo Ball and Ben Simmons playing together with two ball handlers and two outstanding passers. I can envision them in the pick and roll. I envision them being a transition nightmare. Defensively, having both of those guys, I mean that it would be a really good get for them to get Lonzo Ball. Again, not sure the price tag, not sure what it would take. Then you'd also have to contend with the fact that he will be a restricted free agent this coming offseason, so that's a factor as well. And then Hill, listen, I mean Hill's not going to take Hill's the least riskiest because it's not going to take you much. It's probably going to take a second round pick and matching his salary, which would basically be Mike Scott and Terrence Ferguson make that work. So. I think four really good options. Again, certainly different tiers to each guy, certainly different skill sets really to all four guys, but all four guys can help. So that's the big thing. As this goes on, we'll definitely, if anything comes up, I mean, you guys might see stuff come up before I do. So if you do, please feel free, drop it in my chat and I will definitely talk about it and definitely get to it. And please, questions, keep them coming in. Greatly appreciate it. I did see Tom Arison points to Tobias on JJ Redick's podcast. For those of you who didn't see it, obviously, JJ Redick looks like he's going to be a buyout candidate. I don't see a path to the Pelicans trading him. You never know. Maybe there's a bigger trade. There's something bigger in the works where that could happen. But clearly, it looks like JJ's going to be a buyout guy. If that happens, Tobias Harris was on his podcast, and there was some cryptic stuff said, man, where it sort of seemed like JJ Redick, one, already knows he's getting bought out, and two, he might like to be Tobias Harris's teammate again. So very interesting conversation there. But yeah, listen, I see a lot of people kind of get like skeptical about the JJ Redick stuff. But listen, you're not asking JJ Redick to be a starter this time around. You're not asking him to be one of your best 5 players and close games out. That's not who he is right now. That's not who you're asking him to be. You're asking him to come off the bench perhaps and give you shooting when you need it. He still has that gravity when he plays. He's so good off the ball and he draws so much attention that it could really open up some things offensively. And if he kills you defensively, guess what? You don't have to play him. You go in a different direction. You go to a mid-East style. You do something else. So I would be on board if JJ Redick is there and he could be had in a buyout situation, not having to give up any assets. I'm in. I'm in for that. RC Campbell Powell is a good player. Yes, he is. And he's having a career year, shooting the lights out. He's over, I think, 43% at last check from 3. They could certainly use that. Plus, again, his ability to create. Nick Nurse, they'll run isolations for him. Like, who on the Sixers right now, other than Joel Embiid in the post, who are you running isolations for on this Sixers roster? So Powell adding that different kind of element, I think would be huge for the Sixers. Hill scares me after the bubble. Yeah, I hear you. He did struggle in the bubble, but you know what? I'd also point to 2 years ago when he was on the Bucks and they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals to play Toronto. He was outstanding in that series, like really, really good. Him and Brogdon were so good in that series. They made Bledsoe a deep reserve at that point because they were both so good. So I hear you, George Hill. The age certainly scares me. He's older. He's an older guy. So I am slightly worried about that. But again, I don't think the cost is going to be Mike Scott, Terrence Ferguson, second round pick. That's what you're looking at. So if that's what you're giving up for a backup point guard who is, again, sturdy. And the one thing I love about George Hill, and it's when I heard DeLon Wright, when I don't know if there's anything out there with him right now, but those two guys don't turn the ball over. And they could use that. They could use a guy like a point guard, a floor general who just takes care of the basketball. And not on top of that, Hill is an excellent shooter. He was having an excellent shooting season before he got hurt. I know it's a right thumb injury, so you're a little leery about that. But yeah, I still think he can help them. I still think he would be a good addition. Again, when you consider cost, I think that's the big thing. So not as big of a risk. Again, if he doesn't play well, you don't play him. And Jamie points out, can't deny JJ's chemistry with Joel. And that's the other thing. I think when you talk about a guy like JJ Redick and what he can bring to the table and what he could bring out of Joel Embiid and that dribble and handoff stuff that they ran, man. I mean, it was deadly. Not even just Joel Embiid. When they ran that with Ben Simmons, it was deadly. And now that Doc Rivers and even Brett Brown, started it last year where they're using Ben more as a screener and a roller, it just makes him way more dangerous. It makes the offense way more dangerous. You put JJ Redick in that mix, and it could be a pretty interesting dynamic. And again, you're not relying on JJ like you were in the past. Because, a couple years ago, it was the offense was JJ and Joel, right? And that's not the case anymore. It doesn't have to be that. You have Tobias Harris having a great year. Joel is on a different level, getting offense by himself, scoring at the best rate of his career. Ben Simmons has been better offensively and better scoring the basketball. You have Shake Milton emerging as a bench option, scoring off the bench. So, and again, if you pull one of these deals and you get a guy like a Norman Powell, again, just not nearly as reliant upon JJ Redick in the offense and to create things. Tom, Snyder Cut, I got to be honest with you. And it's so funny because you see the Batman stuff in the background, and I am the biggest Batman guy there is. I have not watched the Snyder Cut yet. I'm dying to. So for those of you who maybe you live a single life, you get to do stuff on your own and watch shows that you want to watch whenever you want them. I have a wonderful girlfriend of almost 6 years, and we watch stuff together, or I watch Teen Mom. So, and she doesn't want to watch the Snyder Cut. She did not like the first Justice League at all. Can't say I blame her. But yeah, so I have not watched the Snyder Cut yet, Tom. I am very anxious. Listen, I might do it tonight because I might not sleep tonight. And while I'm waiting for some type of news, maybe I'll pop it on. I probably got 4 hours to kill tonight. So, but I've heard some good things. I like the idea of Cyborg being developed a little bit. But anyway, basketball. Kelvin Nunez for sure. JJ back would be way better than nothing and would make the stars happy. Listen, I would say two things to that, Kelvin. One, I don't think it would just be JJ. I feel like they're going to do something else. There's going to be a trade. And certainly them bringing back JJ does not preclude them from doing anything. If anything, a trade that frees up a roster spot, that just makes it all the more easier to bring in JJ Redick. So, but I think it's an excellent point you make about making the stars happy. Listen, Joel Embiid really loved playing with JJ. Ben Simmons loved playing with JJ. Clearly, Tobias loved playing with JJ. Doc loved, him and JJ are in a good place too. He loved coaching JJ. So there's a lot of good connections there. A lot of things that make a lot of sense for the Sixers to bring back JJ. So there's that. My buddy Bido, I love you, buddy. You're even more handsome than I am. So get out of here. Get out of town. So RC Scott is really having a bad year. Do they replace him? So Mike Scott's such a weird case, man. I mean, he's been so up and down since he's been here because he was so good. And he was the throw-in. Let's call it like we see it. When they made that trade for Tobias Harris, it was for Tobias Harris. Boban was a nice backup five, if you remember the time, because they didn't have a decent backup five option. They were really, they were playing Jonah Bolden and Justin Patton at times. So they needed a backup five, and Boban was that. So those are kind of the two guys. And Mike Scott was almost like a throw-in and wound up carving out himself a really nice role for that team and being a really integral part of that postseason run. And then, he signs the extension or the 2-year deal on the mid-level, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. His knees have been giving him problems. And between that and consistency, he's really struggled. This year, I blame it mostly on the injuries. I think the guy's just hurt. It stinks. He's a good dude, and he's been a fan favorite, obviously, and he plays hard and he works hard. And we talk about guys being good influences. I think he's great for the team. But yeah, I think it makes sense for both parties. I mean, maybe Mike Scott plays somewhere, maybe he gets his legs back under him, maybe he gets a fresh start, gets to prove himself as he's about to hit free agency again, and the Sixers, move on and maybe get an upgrade on the roster. Whether that's an upgrade at the 4, I don't know. I know a lot of people are really focused on the idea of like a stretch 5. I personally don't think it's as big of a need as some people believe, because especially if you make it, so let's say you get Kyle Lowry, right? Or you even get a Norman Powell or Alonzo Ball. You play in lineups where if you are playing against a more mobile 5, you throw in Ben Simmons at the 5, and then you have Kyle Lowry or Lonzo Ball or Norman Powell kind of run the point, have those two in a pick and roll. I mean, that's that's going to be really tough to stop for an opposing defense. And then you're still having Ben Simmons defense on the other end. So if a team does go small and it's really proving difficult for Dwight Howard, I think having that Ben Simmons option is huge. And I think that's the reason why I don't think they necessarily have to trade for a stretch five. Maybe they do. Maybe Bjelica, again, Bjelica fits nicely into that trade exception. And maybe, again, you throw the Kings a second-round pick, not much. Maybe that's the right move. I don't know. I personally, I think that is the one thing I think has been just slightly overblown. I think Daryl Morey is right on it. If these are the four guys that he is truly targeting, we're talking about Lowry, Powell, Ball, and George Hill. I think that's the right way to go. I think they need more ball handling, more scoring, more shooting, and all four of those guys provide that to a different level. And then I have Mo asking, what do you think the chances that the Sixers do nothing at this trade deadline? I worry that is always just a big tease. Under 10% would be great news. Listen, it's not impossible, I would say. My gut tells me they do something. I don't think Daryl Morey stands pat. We know Daryl Morey's history. We've seen it, what he's done in the past with the Rockets. Last year, he orchestrated that trade to get Covington there. And I can't even remember how many players were. It was literally the most amount of players ever in a trade. So this is a guy who's not going to sit on his hands. He likes to make things happen. And I get to an extent the chemistry. You don't want to disrupt it too much. And I tend to agree with that. Like, Danny Green is a guy who has been so good for them recently, and overall for this year, he's been really good. And, I think if you're moving him, I think the only situation I'm moving him as far as like the players that have kind of been discussed in the trade rumors, I'm moving him for Kyle Lowry, sure, because that's Kyle Lowry. But anyone else, I'm really hesitant to move Danny Green because I think he's been that good on the court. I think he's been that big off the court and for the chemistry. So I don't agree with a move that would kind of gut the roster of some of their, of multiple rotational players. So that would kind of be the benefit, right? If you trade for a Norman Powell or Alonzo Ball, you can keep Danny Green. And that makes you deeper on top of the other stuff, on top of the intangible stuff of Danny Green being such a great leader. It just makes you a deeper basketball team because you have more playoff proven players that you can go to. And it's like the idea of giving Doc Rivers options, right? I mean, when you look at, for an example, let's say you just bring Norman Powell in the mix. Is Norman Powell a starter? Is Norman Powell your sixth man? It doesn't matter. It matters who closes games. And one thing I've liked about Doc Rivers, as we've seen this year, he's not afraid. I don't love the all-bench lineups. I want to get that out of the way. I am not a big fan of the all-bench lineups. But the one thing he does that I like a lot is to close games, he doesn't always have to go back to his starting five. Last night you saw it against Golden State. He went with Shake to close out the game because Shake was playing very well, and Shake has been playing very well over the last couple of games. So he rode Shake out, and I like the idea of if you bring a guy like Norman Powell in here, if Norman Powell's hot, you ride him at the end of the game. If Seth Curry's hot, you ride him at the end of the game. Shake Milton's hot, you ride him at the end of the game. You need defense, you ride Matisse Thybulle to the end of the game. So I think just having those options is so big. You don't have to play all these guys minutes every night or every game, but just having those options and having the matchups, because that's the other thing about the playoffs. One series you might need Seth Curry, to be, or even like a Shake. You really need Shake Milton shooting and his ball handling. Another series you might just really need Matisse Thybulle's defense because a certain player is giving you trouble. So we see how this goes, right? These things they change from series to series, from game to game. So giving Doc those kind of adjustments to be able to do that and kind of play that chess game in a 7-game series, I think that'll be huge. So that was one of the big things. Jeff Stewart checks in, says, in honor of Dwight Howard saying he wanted the Stone Cold Stunner Giannis the other day. What is your favorite wrestling finishing move, and who was your favorite wrestler? Wow. So I'll be really honest with you, Jeff. Wrestling, I loved it growing up. I grew out of it, I don't know, late teens, I guess you would say. But growing up, I was a big Bret Hart guy, and I loved me a good sharpshooter. So that's probably what I'll go with. So yeah, that's probably what I have to say. Bret Hart and the good old fashioned sharpshooter, man. I'm a big fan of that. I was also I was a big HBK guy too. Gotta love a good drop kick to the face. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah. Jamie agreed. I'd be sad to see Danny Green go after the way he's busted his rear end this season, and it's true. Like again, Danny Green's just been such a big part of this team, and just playing so well. Especially since the All-Star break, shooting the ball very well, playing very well in general. Mo, is Will Barton talk dead? Not even sure that Denver would want to what Denver would want in return. So since that report, I haven't heard much about Will Barton, but let me tell you, man, similar to kind of, I guess, to like a lesser level of Norman Powell, that would be a guy I'd be very interested in. Will Barton can score. I mean, flat out. That's what it is. And again, I talked about like that audacity Norman Powell has where he's not afraid to shoot anytime, any place, any situation. Will Barton's got that too. And I think he could be huge here. I saw that. I know the Aaron Gordon talks have kind of come and gone. Denver was interested. One of the things Denver could do if they were to get were to get Aaron Gordon, is Will Barton would be probably part of that to match Aaron Gordon's salary. So maybe the Sixers get in on that, and get in, a 3-team deal kind of. And instead of Will Barton going to Orlando, Denver ships him here. And I don't know what you'd have to give up. He's under contract this year and has a player option for next year that I suspect he would pick up. So does that make him more or less valuable? I don't know. For Denver, I get it because they're trying to clear some, maybe clear some cap space for them, make them more flexible. And then, get a guy like Aaron Gordon who can kind of replace that Jeremy Grant role for them, which they've clearly missed this year. So yeah, if Will Barton, if it's a 2nd-round pick, if it's 2 2nd-round picks, if it's a 1st-round pick even, I'd want it protected, but I would do that for Will Barton. I think Will Barton would be a huge addition. Haven't heard much about him other than hearing that he could be a part of an Aaron Gordon trade. But it could behoove Daryl Morey to maybe get in on that and be a 13 that would take Barton. Tom Harrison, Danny Green brought back the post-game party. I did love that, man. It's so great. It's cool, man. Their chemistry, I have to say. And it's funny, I had Mark Zumoff on the last podcast, and he kind of said it was like a chicken and the egg thing. Is it the winning that has bred the good chemistry, or is it the chemistry that has bred the winning? Probably a little bit of both. And I think Danny Green has been a huge part of that. Any chance we could see a team trade and not have to trade, 3-team trade and not have to trade Danny? So if you're talking for Kyle Lowry, no. Danny Green almost has to be involved. I actually don't quote me on this. I have the trade machine up in my browser right now, but I do not believe there is a way they can make a Kyle Lowry trade happen without Danny Green. Now, all these other guys, again, Powell, Lonzo Ball, even Victor Oladipo, if the Sixers kind of dip their toes back in that water, you don't necessarily have to move Danny Green to get any of those guys. So there are ways to do that. I would imagine, look, Doc Rivers loves Danny Green, Daryl Morey loves Danny Green, and it's funny because I feel like a few weeks ago, Sixers fans probably would have been like, yeah, Danny Green for a bag of basketball is cool, but he's played very well, and credit to him, and how good he's been. But yeah, there are certainly avenues to explore that you can improve this team and still hang on to Danny Green and have him be a big part of this team, which I think, again, short of a Kyle Lowry trade, I think that would behoove them. Let's see. I hope Matisse Thybulle doesn't get traded. Yeah, listen, I don't want to say that Matisse Thybulle's untouchable because short of really Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, I've pretty much there's no untouchable. But Matisse Thybulle's going to be really important, especially in the playoffs, especially against the Nets and even Milwaukee. When you're having to deal with Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis, you're going to need Matisse Thybulle's defense from time to time. So it's all going to be big. Excuse me. It's all going to be, Matisse Thybulle is going to be a huge part of this thing going forward if they don't move him. And I suspect they don't want to move him. I would imagine. I think he's been so good for them, and he plays such an important role, and he's so impactful on defense. And the other thing to factor in too is he's cheap. He's cheap not only this year, but he's going to be cheap the next couple years. And the Sixers are going to need all the cheap talent they can get. They're already, in the tax, and they're going to need cheap talent. And having a guy like Thybulle, who probably, I would imagine, in the very near future, has an all-defensive team selection in his very near future, to have a guy like that on a cheap contract is pretty huge. Could you land Norman Powell and Lonzo Ball? Eh, Could you? Sure. It's possible. Um, I don't necessarily see the path to that. Because then again, you'd probably, in that scenario, you'd almost have to give up Danny Green for one or the other just to make salaries work and without surrendering, 10 players on your roster. So it's not impossible. I would imagine it's, one of those guys as opposed to both. I don't know that they could swing both, but it's not impossible. I will say that, RC. CJ, when will the buyouts start happening, and is there a deadline for buyouts? So pretty much buyouts are going to start right after the deadline because teams are going to realize that they can't, they're once they realize that they can't trade them anymore. A guy like a JJ Redick who's on a team like New Orleans who doesn't have a big role, and I'm sure New Orleans for their part would like to probably get a look at some of their younger guys. They have kind of a glut of guards right now, and that's part of the reason why Lonzo Ball is kind of being dangled out there because they have, a Nickeil Alexander-Walker who's starting to play well. They have Kira Lewis, who was their first round pick this year, who I happen to like an awful lot, and I think he's going to be very good. So I do think that's part of it. As far as I apologize, I don't know the date off the top of my head, but there is a date that players have to be signed by in order to make the postseason roster. So that's the date you're looking at. For the Sixers, I would imagine. So let's say JJ Redick gets bought out as soon as tomorrow, right? As soon as the deadline's over. I imagine the Sixers would want it, or whoever is going to sign you, whether it's the Sixers, whether it's Brooklyn, they're going to want to sign him within the next few days. So I don't think there's really any worry about that. I would imagine any buyout candidates, they would be signed very soon. Another guy that I saw there potentially could be out there is Otto Porter Jr. And that's a guy I would also be very interested in. When he's healthy, shoots the three ball at an elite clip, excellent defensively. There's a lot to like there. I think he'd be a guy who would fit very well. It would be could potentially play a very big role in the playoffs. Jeff, again, Celtics may end up as an 8 seed. Do you want to play them in the first round to try to get revenge for last year, or would you rather play someone like Charlotte? So it's tough. They match up. I don't know what the Celtics are going to do. It looks like they might not do anything now. If the Aaron Gordon thing happens, Harrison Barnes doesn't look like it's going to happen. It looks like the Kings are going to be content to kind of hang on to him and maybe build with him. The Heat seem to be the favorite to land LaMarcus Aldridge. I thought maybe the Celtics would make sense for him, but the way the Celtics are sinking, I guess LaMarcus probably doesn't want to go there. I guess from the Sixers standpoint, you'd rather play Charlotte just because you've really dominated Charlotte this year when you played them, and I just think that matchup is much, much better, especially if LaMelo Ball is hurt for the year. If he's not going to come back, I thought for stretches, he's been their best player. So if he's not going to be available, Charlotte's certainly the better matchup. I guess you just don't want to mess around with Boston because you never know. When they have Tatum, they have Jaylen Brown, they have Kemba. If they hold on to Marcus Smart, which I absolutely think they should, when they have those guys, they might. I'm not saying they can beat the Sixers as the 8 and the Sixers being the 1, but I just think you don't even want to mess around with that. You'd rather take a team like Charlotte that you can kind of dominate. So for me, I would say for them, Charlotte. That would be the team I'd be much more interested in playing. Thibault gets most steals per minute in the league. Having him sit when Simmons is out or late games together, overwhelming teams. And I agree. Those two together. And listen, Danny Green, I think the secret to Danny Green is defensively, he can be really good, but you can't kind of put him on these. He's lost a step. He's 33 years old. You can't put him on these kind of more slippery, quicker guards. I think that you're kind of asking for trouble. You saw a little bit against the Warriors. Jordan Poole got by him a bunch and kind of created some shots for other people. And, it kind of got the Sixers defense off kilter because of that. But when he plays against guys who aren't like the most explosive, like RJ Barrett, I thought he did a pretty good job against him in the Knicks the other night. I think those kind of guys, and don't forget, Danny's 6'6". He's not a little guy. He's 6'6", so he can kind of handle 2s and 3s pretty easily. So against a team like the Nets, I wouldn't listen. Those guys are great. Harden, Durant are great players. They're going to get there from time to time. But Danny Green could do a decent enough job on those guys to just make it difficult for them. So I do think having those three, having Ben Simmons, Danny Green, and Matisse Thybulle, it makes you as dangerous defensively as anybody on the perimeter. So I think hanging on to Danny Green and Matisse Thybulle would be huge. Losing one, it would sting. Losing both, I don't know how you would overcome it. To be perfectly frank with you, I don't know how you would really make that work in the postseason. I think you'd have a lot of trouble and you struggle with that. Do you think we have to capitalize off Joel Embiid's MVP season and go out and get Lowry, being that we never know with if we'll play like this again with his health concerns? It's a fair question, and I think that's something that Daryl Morey is certainly going to weigh. I will say that Joel Embiid, he's 26. He's done a much better job of taking care of his body. The injury that occurred was kind of a freak one. It wasn't anything I thought that, a guy kind of landed on his knee. It wasn't anything that I thought he did or anything that kind of happened wrong. It's just kind of, for lack of a better term, shitty luck. I mean, someone lands on his knee, and that's going to happen in NBA games. So, but I do think it's a fair argument to make because obviously he's got the injury history. He like you said, he's playing at an MVP caliber way right now. He's been so good this season. He's been, and you want to try to kind of capitalize on it, but at the same time, you don't want to mortgage everything because he's also not going anywhere. You still have him for a couple more years, and you can offer him that max extension in a couple years. So it's going to be, I think for Morey, it's going to be a balancing act, and I think what makes him really good at his job is I think he'll know that he'll balance it. He'll make, if he makes a move, it'll be a move that he knows can improve this team now, but he'll also know that it'll still have them coming back. So like if they make a trade for Kyle Lowry, he's probably Daryl Morey probably has a pretty good sense of whether or not they can re-sign him, and if they do, that's kind of some protection. So you're not just making that kind of all-out move, and you're still going to be back. And I think it's like this too. You have Ben Simmons, you have Joel Embiid, you have Tobias Harris. None of those three guys are going anywhere. As long as you have those three guys, you're going to be in really good shape. So make the move for Lowry if it's there. You know what I mean? But because even if, let's say the worst case scenario is you trade for Lowry and he does decide, you know what? Didn't really like my time with the Sixers. I'm going to go to the Heat. You're still in okay shape because you still have your all-stars, and then you have a little bit of space and a little bit of wiggle room to work with Daryl Morey getting a full offseason. So that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. So I'm going to find some questions that I know we got off Twitter. Does a guy like Buddy Hield make sense as an ad? I would say I'm probably out on Buddy Hield if I'm being really honest, and especially because in order to get Buddy Hield, you'd probably have to give up Danny Green just to make the salaries work. And if you do that, Buddy Hield's not a ball handler and he's not a very good defender. So you're sacrificing two pretty big things right there. And then I just worry him and Seth Curry in a backcourt defensively. That would really concern me in a game. You'd probably have to bring one of them off the bench and start Thybulle in that instance. But also, I think the Kings are going to try to. There was a lot of chatter about them. I mean, I know they're kind of open for business, but I think they kind of have to be blown away a little bit by an offer. And for me, I don't think the Sixers should be in a position to try to blow the Kings away for an offer for Buddy Hield. I think they're better off kind of passing. It's funny to think about too, because this offseason, like Tobias Harris, you would have done Tobias Harris or Buddy Hield probably in a heartbeat. Now, there's not a GM in the world that would make that deal because of how good Tobias Harris has been this year and kind of how Buddy Hield's he's taken a little bit of a step back. He's still an excellent shooter, obviously, still brings a lot to the table. But yeah, for me, just considering his salary and his contract, I would probably be out on that, which is just, it's so funny to think about that when we think about this past offseason and how a lot of people would have done, would have easily made a move to get Buddy Hield in here. So let's see what else we got here. How would a lineup with Lowry look? So it's very interesting to think about because Kyle Lowry is 6 feet tall. Obviously built like a tank, plays much bigger than 6 feet tall. But then you'd have Kyle Lowry, and with Danny Green gone, you'd have Seth Curry. Do you want to start 6 foot Kyle Lowry, and I think Seth is listed at like 6'2", 6'3"? Do you want to start that small of a backcourt? Maybe because you have Kyle Lowry who you can get away with that. Or if you don't wind up not parting with Thibault, which I think would be ideal, do you start Thibault? So then your starting five would be Lowry, Thibault, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid. Then you bring Seth Curry off the bench. You bring Seth Curry and Shake off the bench. You kind of got something brewing there, I think, with a pretty dangerous bench. So yeah, and I love the idea of Lowry. We talk so much about the bench, and I love the idea of maybe you keep Lowry in there for the Dwight Howard minutes, and you have basically Embiid and Simmons running together at all times, and then you have Lowry and Dwight Howard kind of running that second unit, because we've all seen the issues that kind of arise when it's Simmons and Howard together, and just how much the paint gets clogged up. You roll out a lineup that's Lowry, Milton, Seth Curry. I don't know, pick your four. I guess maybe you go Tobias and then Howard. I mean, that's a pretty good kind of second unit there. That's a lot of shooting, and then some shot creation. It's got a lot of good stuff in there. So there's again, it goes back to when I talk about options, and I just think Kyle Lowry just extends your team so much, and he just gives you so many more options. When you have a guy like that who's going to play so many minutes, and who's going to be such an impactful shot creator and do so many things and kind of lead the offense and be a floor general. It's just the optionality it gives you, I think, would be so huge. Is there validity to Lowry and Raptors working on an extension, a new contract now? If that is true rumor, does that increase the chances for a trade or no? So technically, I think you are not allowed to listen. It's not going to stop them, but technically, I don't think you are actually allowed to offer Lowry a deal, an extension. But sure, I'm sure the Raptors. I'm sure that Kyle Lowry and Masai Ujiri have had talks. Like, they both 100% know where the other is, right? Like, I'm sure Kyle Lowry knows exactly where the Raptors stand in their future and what they want to do next. They have Van Vliet, they have Siakam, and Anunoby all locked up under big money deals. So those guys are all in the fold, and there's that is what it is, and that's why they're might be looking to move on for Norman Powell, because they know they can't re-sign him. Is it impossible that the Raptors re-sign Lowry? No, it's not. They certainly could. If I'm the Raptors, I don't know that it makes sense for them, because Lowry's going to be 35 years old. Next year he'll be 36 in the next season. So do you really want to keep going with that, knowing you're not a finals contender likely with Lowry, Siakam, Van Vliet, Anunoby, and considering where those, the Anunoby, Siakam, Van Vliet are all kind of just entering their primes. So maybe there's a guy that kind of fits that mix better. I don't know. So I would say it's not impossible, certainly, that the Raptors work something out and bring Kyle Lowry back, try to get him to sign an extension. But to me, when I look at the Raptors kind of impartially, if it's not the Sixers, even in Miami, I mean, just to get something for him, like Duncan Robinson would look pretty damn good in a Raptors uniform for them, and he would be a really nice fit. Adding kind of, shot making outside of Van Vliet and Siakam, and kind of, the attention those guys would draw to be able to kick like a guy like a Robinson, the shooter that he is, will look pretty damn good. Let's see here. Yeah, and then and this is an excellent point too. In the playoffs, you will always have one of Simmons, Embiid, or Lowry on the court at all times. I mean, that's huge. And then you also throw Tobias Harris in that mix. I mean, you kind of pair those up. I would probably guess it would be Simmons and Embiid. You pair those guys up together, and then Lowry and Harris, you kind of pair them up together, and that's tough, man. That's tough for teams to contend with. That's a strong, deep basketball team. So that's why, as much as it's the price tag's going to be high, it really might be worth it, man, because Lowry's that good, and I think he can make them that much better. So someone said this on the Bill Simmons podcast. I build in Embiid absences in my enjoyment of the Sixers. Obviously prefer him to be played every game, but I do enjoy the fast-paced Sixers from time to time. Listen, and I think that's kind of the argument that you could make for, because listen, first of all, let's get this out of the way. Joel Embiid is Joel Embiid. He's great. He's the best big man in the game, one of the best players in the game. But there is something, I almost like the idea of giving the teams a different look. And again, that's where throwing Ben Simmons in at the 5, I think, could make things interesting and add a new little wrinkle, because you don't have a traditional five, but you have Ben Simmons at 6'10" who could do some things. So I do kind of like the idea of maybe doing that every once in a while, of running and gunning, and having Ben Simmons at the five. And again, if you get Kyle Lowry, Simmons, Harris, Shake Milton, Seth Curry, like those guys running in a second unit. I mean, that's nightmarish for opponents. So that's something I would be very interested in. And that's how they've always kind of played. Even when Brett Brown was here, that's how he wanted to play. Whenever Joel Embiid didn't play, he wanted to play fast. Didn't always work out very well. In fact, more often than not, it didn't work out very well. But this team is certainly different. They are built different, playing much better basketball without Joel Embiid than they have in years past. Yeah, the 16-game winning streak for 2017, and that was the idea of they ran fast, and they basically, it was Ben Simmons surrounded by shooters, and someone brought that up recently to Doc about the idea of Ben Simmons kind of having to adjust, unlike a guy like Giannis or LeBron, who, listen, he's not those guys, but just a similar skill set of the size, the power, the ball handling, the division, the skills, but maybe not the strongest shooters. The idea of those guys having teams built around them, whereas Simmons and Embiid, are tied together. So it is something that's interesting to me. I do wonder what that would be like. What would a team look like with Ben Simmons surrounded by shooters and kind of that look? What would that look like? It's an interesting thing to think about. Obviously, they're flat out, the Sixers are a better team with both guys, but it is an interesting kind of thought. The idea of those guys, Ben Simmons kind of having his own team, what would that look like? Morey has a tough decision to make. What exactly would you do if you were Morey? If I'm Morey, I'm probably not sleeping a freaking wink over the next couple of days. A lot of tough decisions they're going to have to make, man. I'll say this. A couple things. One, Daryl Morey is so much smarter than me. It's not even comparable. So, and then he's got intel that I simply just don't have. He knows. I mean, he knows what the Raptors are kind of thinking. He knows what Kyle Lowry's thinking. He knows the trends of the rest of the league. I'm sure he already has, he's probably 40 steps ahead of all of us, already thinking about the offseason and the draft and what will come and what kind of would be the domino effect of any trades he would make. So, I'm sure he is way ahead of all of us, certainly way ahead of me at anything like that. Yeah, and Dylan, Dylan Reeves, you're nailing it, man. I think Morey waits to see what teams do, like chess. Truly, I do think that's the way he operates. So he's not going to be the guy who's going to make a move just to make a move. He's meticulous, man. I mean, he's calculated. He's gonna play the market. He's gonna play it right, and he's gonna do. I think ultimately he'll do what is best for the Sixers. I think you can count on him to do that. So yeah, I've been really impressed with everything Morey's done, which no surprise, the guy is one of the best executives in all of sports. I thought that was such a great move when they were able to get him. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what he does over the next, less than 24 hours now, trade deadline's tomorrow. It'll be very interesting to see what he does, and what kind of direction he goes, because it's a fair point. I don't think there is as much weighing of the future because of what I said earlier about the idea of, as long as you have those two guys, you're in really good shape. So yeah. So if you guys have any more questions, I'm probably going to get ready to wrap this up soon. There's an interesting one. The Knicks have emerged as a serious potential destination for Andre Drummond, according to Kevin O'Connor. So that's an interesting one. A number of teams to express interest in Norman Powell, according to one educated estimate on trade deadline eve. It's in the teens. That's according to Mark Stein of the New York Times. And yeah, I mean, it's a guy having a career year. He's having a great year. The contract, again, very affordable. And either you're looking at him, maybe you're looking at him as a guy you could potentially re-sign, or maybe you're looking at him as just kind of a gunner rental guy. I mean, either way, he would be an excellent fit. So, they're going to have competition for all these guys, whether it's Lowry, whether it's Powell, whether it's Ball, whether it's George Hill. I mean, there's, the Clippers and the Lakers are both have been rumored to be interested in George Hill. So there's gonna be competition for all these guys. From William Cameron, if the Lowry price is too high, I love the idea of George Hill. I just really want a primary ball handler for that second unit that can keep the offense flowing when Ben sits. Plus, he can shoot. Yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I think George Hill, just a steadying hand. George Hill this year, for those of you who don't know, he's not even averaging a full turnover per game. He's literally averaging 0.9 turnovers a game. Think about how valuable that could be for a team like this to just have that kind of steadying influence, that steadying hand. And as you added, guy can shoot. The guy can shoot the basketball. He's a good passer. He can create a little bit off the dribble, can run a pick and roll. He can do a lot of good things. So is he? Yeah, clear. Like in the list of guys I have, he's number 4. That's not to say he can't help this basketball team, because he absolutely can. So if you come away with this thing and you get, George Hill and you get JJ Redick as a buyout guy, I understand there's going to be people that are disappointed by that, but man, you're going to be a better team. I can promise you that. That makes you a better basketball team, and I think that's pretty big. Apparently, Jason Dumas I believe he's from Bleacher Report, reports that Sixers believe they are long shots to land Lowry. We'll see. It's so funny, man, because there's so much out there. And I said to start this thing off, Tim Reynolds from the AP, he already said that Kyle Lowry, would prefer to go to Miami. And Tim Reynolds is a guy who's all over it, man. He's gotten a lot of stuff right. He was all over the Jimmy Butler stuff a couple of years ago. So I kind of take him at his word for that. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, man, I mean, the Lowry stuff, if that's the one thing I think I want Sixers fans to kind of keep in perspective. Like, yes, you could be disappointed if they don't land Lowry, but I don't think it's a situation where if they don't land Lowry, it's this huge disappointment and the season's over. Like, I still think they can still compete. This is a really good basketball team as is. If they do other things to improve the team beyond, like, other than Lowry, they're going to be right in this thing. So I would say trust Morey, see what happens. And let's see. Jeff, thank you, man. I appreciate all of you guys for checking this out. Thank you so much for tuning in. It means a lot to me that you guys give that much of a shit about what I have to say. It's very cool. I appreciate it. Let's see. Yeah, isn't it crazy how Morey and Doc fell in our laps? Just imagine if we had D'Antoni and the previous front office. Yeah, it's a fair point, man. I mean, sometimes it's kind of better to be lucky than good. Not with all due credit to the Sixers, they closed the deal. They got those guys in. They were able to lure them in here. But yeah, to have both those guys be available when they were, huge. Hill has not played since January. He has had a thumb issue. But listen, man, I think he's a veteran though. You know what I mean? Like he's been around. He's played for multiple different teams. He'll be fine. I think he'll be able to adjust and. If anything, I think he can help get that bench unit into shape. So, they'll adjust to him, I think, more than he'll adjust to them. Last question from Jeff. Who is your favorite Batman? I hate answering this question because I'll never be able to decide between Christian Bale and Michael Keaton. Because look, Michael Keaton was for me, I mean, the Adam West Batman, I grew up watching the reruns back in the day. But Michael Keaton was the OG for me, right? He was the first Batman. He's a Tim Burton Batman. That was my guy. But then Christian Bale, that trilogy is the greatest. That's the greatest thing that's ever been done to the character of Batman. So it's almost impossible for me to to really name which one is my favorite because both guys way up there. Michael Keaton, yeah. I mean, listen, man. If you say Michael Keaton, I'm not going to argue with you. Michael Keaton is great. And he's just a great actor overall. Beyond his role as Batman, Beetlejuice, forget about it. So yeah, I think, I think we're going to wrap it up there, but I appreciate you guys so much, for tuning into the live stream. I'm definitely going to have reaction. Tomorrow I'm actually going on Locker Room, which is an app that's, it's almost like a fan-made radio station. It's pretty cool. A lot of writers I know use it. Jackson Frank, who is a really good follow. He does some stuff for Liberty Ballers. He's really good, really knows the sport of basketball, is a really smart dude. He's hosting a Locker Room chat tomorrow, and I'm going to be involved in that after the deadline passes. So I'll definitely be sending links out for that. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul Hudrick. So yeah, definitely want to check that out. I'm going to have more. I'm going to be writing some stuff for 97.3. So I'm going to be as much on it as I possibly can. I'm probably not going to sleep like at all. But yeah, thank you guys all so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Best director. I mean, Christopher Nolan, guy's a genius. Did such a great job. I've never seen Batman and Paulie in the same room together. I mean, listen, man. No, but listen, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. I will be in touch with you guys very, very soon. We'll see what the Sixers do. I am just as anxious and excited as you guys are to see what happens. But yeah, I will talk to you guys very soon. Thank you so much.